You know, Mark Gorvitz told you when he first met me, but actually I first met him before he met me, because I was present when he was ordained a rabbi. And everyone who was ordained, each person stood up, and we learned something about who you were. And I was so moved that evening, and I was so happy to know you. And then you called me up one day, and I had the chance to really get to know you and to come here. And I'll tell you the truth, sometimes I go places, and I feel I want to bring a little bit of my Father's Spirit to that place and to that community. But I come here, Mark and Harriet and all of you here, I come here to feel my Father's presence here in this place you give to me. And every time I come here, I'm so moved and I'm so grateful to be with you. And I tell you also, and I really mean this, there are a lot of people all over the world who love my father and they love his work and they write about him and so on. But this is the place where, Mark, you have put my father into life, and into life for so many people. You've brought him alive. You've turned his work, his writings, into life. And I thank you so much. And I wish I didn't live so far away, so I could come every Shabbos and be with you. Okay, so Mark, I should say a few words about the Parsha, about the portion of the Torah that we read today. And it's quite a portion, I have to say. There's a lot going on here, and a lot of amazing stories, and I think we all know a lot of them, to begin with. But what's interesting to me, and you were just saying, whispering to me about Jacob earlier, and you find him problematic. There are some good things, and there are some bad things. That's how it is. And I think it's good that way, frankly. I don't like the idea that Torah should always be perfect and tell us everything that we should do. No, because actually, we have some judgment too. So I have to say, the way it opens, okay, yes, it's a wonderful moment here where Jacob is on his way to make a reconciliation with his brother Esau, and he stops overnight, and what do you know? Somebody's wrestling with him. He has a dark night of his soul. He asks for blessing, and this angel gives him a new name. And by the way, there's a beautiful Hebrew poem by a woman named Zelda, about the different names that everybody has. She starts by saying, you know, there's a name that God gives us. Then there's a name our parents give us. And there's a name that our friends give us. And then there's a name that our enemies give us. But we have many names within us. And Jacob gets a new name that night. And then he goes on to meet his brother. And I love this verse. It's an action verse. I just have to read this verse. It's chapter 33, verse 4. And it says, Esau runs to greet his brother Jacob. He runs, and he embraces him, and he falls on his neck, and he kisses him. And they wept. And that switch is so wonderful. First Esau is doing all of these things, and then they wept, Esau and Jacob. And I love that moment also of weeping. I love the kiss and I love the weeping. You know, there's something special about the kiss in the Bible. A kiss of reconciliation. And it's interesting that in the Bible, kisses come between siblings, most of all. And we all know what it's like to have tension with a member of the family and wish we could get reconciled somehow. And it's so, so hard. But I love it also that Esau, who was really the one who was wronged by Jacob, that he's willing to run to him and embrace him and kiss him. And then they weep. And that moment of weeping, and that I think is a real mystery in life. Why it is at a moment of reconciliation that we cry. Where do our tears come from? I think we've all experienced that. I have, to cry in that moment. And how crying can also be a moment of reconciliation. But it's a moment when your heart is open. I love that. I love that verse. And I have to say that it also reminds me of my father, because he also had not just a dark night, but many years of darkness when first he was a little boy and his father died, and then when he was a student in Berlin, he went there in 1927, and then in 1933, just when he finished writing his PhD dissertation, Hitler came to power. And he was trying desperately to get out. And finally, he was plucked like a brand from the fires of Europe. But then he came to America and desperately tried to rescue his mother and his sisters, and it didn't work, and they were killed. It was a terrible thing to go through. And my father used to say, what do you do in a moment of tragedy? There are different ways to respond. You can be silent, you can cry, or you can try to turn your sorrow into a song. And that's ultimately what he did, and I admire him enormously to go through that and then be able to write these books and inspire us and to be a song for the world. My father talks about forgiveness, and he says, easy forgiveness, and this comes from that book, Moral Grandeur and Spiritual Audacity, that I edited of his writings. He said, to offer easy forgiveness would be not only self-complacency, but also self-abasement. Don't forgive like this. No, that would be inappropriate. Don't denigrate yourself. Don't be complacent. It's tough. You go through a dark night of the soul before you can forgive somebody. It's tough. Easy forgiveness, he says, implies someone is devoid of responsibility. Don't just forgive someone. They have responsibility and they have to take it. And he says moral responsibility is the heart of the dignity of human beings. To take responsibility for what we've done. To take responsibility for things that we've done. All of us have done wrong things. But that is what gives us dignity. To be accepting of our responsibility. I give myself dignity to do that. And I find that extraordinary also. Yeah, reconciliation is hard, especially to reconcile with someone in your family, somebody that you love, and somebody who's done us wrong. I think all of us, I certainly have had that. It's tough. It's tough. But I think of what it means to be able to embrace and then to kiss and to cry. But you know, I have to say that this Parshat goes on to chapter 34, and I don't like it. I think it's outrageous, and I even question if it should still be allowed to remain in the Bible. Because that chapter says that Dinah, this daughter of Jacob, went out. She went out, and you know the name of this whole Parsha is Vayishlach. They go forward. People are going forward. Esau goes out, Jacob goes out. Now finally a woman goes out, and what happens? She's attacked and raped. And what happens to her? She's silent in the Bible. Now how do we understand that? Why isn't she given a voice to talk about the horror of what she experienced? She's not. What is that about? And instead her brothers, they take revenge. That's not the way to behave. But where is her voice? Was it so horrific that she could no longer speak even? Has she lost her soul? What is it there in that chapter? The problem I have is that the commentaries blame her for going out. If she hadn't gone out, she wouldn't have been raped. Oh please, this is not okay. This Jewish tradition needs some revitalization. It needs some new voices, and that's what we contribute. Because those commentaries can't stand, and I'm not sure that chapter can, but I'll say if we do want to read it, we have to read it with our own understanding of what this means. Okay, finally, the end. So what happens? In the end, Jacob has an experience of a covenant with God, of a relationship. And he creates a place, the house of God, Beit El. Beit El. And what does it mean to be in the house of God? What does it mean that we create a house of God? And that is something that I do like very much in the Torah and in Judaism. And it feels very true and real to me. A house of God doesn't come to us sort of falling down from heaven. It's what we create. We create Beit El, the house of God. And we ask ourselves, how do we do that? What does it mean to live in a house of God? How do we behave in a house of God? And how do we treat other people? And the fact is that this creation of a house of God is the culmination of this Parsha, of this section of the Torah. And this whole section of the Torah is all about people and how they relate to each other. About reconciliation, about names, about rape. Good and bad. And so I think the way this Parsha concludes for me also tells me that to create a house of God, we start first and foremost with our relationship with other human beings. This is not a Parsha that's all about people and God. It's about people and people. How do we behave? How do we treat other people? Do we treat other people and create a community so that our community becomes a house of God? That's the challenge. And I have to say that of all the synagogues I've ever gone to, this one feels closest to me to a house of God. Thank you so much. I thank all of you who are here. You feel to me like real human beings. When I come here, my heart is touched. I feel like we can really talk, like our souls are here in front of us, not hidden back there somewhere. And I'm so grateful to you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.